Hi, my name is Joey and I've read and reviewed thousands of UC applications, and in this video I'll be walking through the UC application step by step. So the first section is we have the About You, right? So this is usually pretty self-explanatory. Now with the California SSID thing, this is really cool for California students. It allows you to kind of download the transcript information from your high school to the UC application. It saves you maybe 20 minutes of just like plunking in all the grades and stuff, but you still need to double check it just to make sure everything is matched appropriately. So far I haven't seen very many issues, so that's pretty good there. So then we move on to the citizenship and residency. Of course you should know your citizenship status. Hopefully you do, right? Now when it comes to residency, a lot of questions that I get from families is, well, how do I establish residency in California? I don't want to pay the outrageous out-of-state tuition, and my answer to that is, I'm sorry. You need to have been in California for at least 366 days prior to enrolling in the school, and this has to be for like job purposes, tax purposes, and education purposes. If you graduated from a high school that's not in California and your parents don't work or have a primary residence in California, you're going to struggle trying to get in-state tuition. So those dreams should not exist. Now the demographics, but I thought that UCs and colleges can't consider race in the admissions process. Yes, that's absolutely correct. The reason all of this information here is just for data collection purposes. On the back end, the UCs do need to collect the data to see what kind of students are enrolling on the campus. So that's why this is all here. So you do not need to worry about the reader seeing this information. This is completely redacted by the time the application gets to me when I review it. Going into your background in your household, so sometimes this information does show up on the platform. For example, I can see what languages you decide to choose. This doesn't factor into the evaluation process. I promise it doesn't. There's no implicit bias there. And then when it comes to your household information, so now when you're putting your information here, some people freak out about this. What is the total income earned? What are they going to do with this information? Again, there's two reasons. This is data collection purposes, just to kind of get the context of the school that you're coming from. And then the other reason is for fee waivers. If you fall below the federal poverty guidelines, then you'll qualify for fee waivers for up to 4 UC campuses. There's no way around that. Now, when it comes to the parent job information, this is purely optional. You can put as much or as little as you're comfortable putting in. For me as a reader, it helps me for context to see what your parents do. Are they unemployed? Are they retired? Are they a teacher? Because then that kind of contributes to your trajectory as an applicant, right? How did their background kind of influence you as a student? And then over here, we have the statement of legal residence, right? So this is just reiterating how you qualify for residency, right? You need to be physically present for more than 365 days. Unfortunately, if you're applying for other states or private institutions, you're more often considered an international student, but that's a case-by-case basis, so you'll have to call those colleges individually. Moving on, we're going to choose campuses and choose majors. If you are ELC eligible in local context, you should have received a letter sometime this summer stating such. If that is the case, you can save yourself some money and not apply to UC Merced. You'll automatically get an acceptance to UC Merced. The other thing that does strongly come into consideration though is this: what is your parents' highest level of education? Okay, now we're onto the choosing major section. So this is the one that's really minefield, so to speak. So when you start clicking through it, it's usually pretty clear. For example, if you click on Berkeley, let's say, it tells you that if you pick it as a major, it requires a supplemental application, right? And now, interestingly enough, right, the really selective majors, they don't let you choose as an alternate major. Now, here's a fun fact about Berkeley. They actually don't consider the alternate major. They haven't in the vast majority of cases. They are only asking these as data collection purposes. At least that's what they say, right? So if you put a highly selective major as your first major and you don't get in, you're not going to be considered for your alternate major. 99%. There's a small exception, but it's so small that I wouldn't even bank on that, right? So please keep that in mind. Now for the other schools, they all consider alternate majors, of course, except for UCLA, because it says UCLA does not offer alternate majors there. So the general rule of thumb is you put the more selective major as your first choice, and then you put the less selective major as your alternate major. If you have any questions on that, do have a full comprehensive breakdown blog. Just let me know and I'll send you the link to that. Similarly, over here, UC College Ranking, UCSD. UCSD College Rankings has nothing to do with your major. These colleges are just there for where you live. They have specific graduation requirements, and then their dorms are in particular locations on the campus. So you should probably Google where the colleges are located to kind of see how close they are to where your main building is. For example, John Muir. This is a really popular college because it's located in the central campus where all the main buildings are, versus 7th College is all the way on North Campus and 8th College is all the way on South Campus. Given how large the campus is, you'd need a bike or rollerblades or to take the bus to get to class most days. Now going into the academic history. So this is where you're going to need your official high school transcript to plug in all of the information. Some mistakes that I see students make on this section. Number 1, they don't put in their 7th and 8th grade classes. Now this matters for math and for language other than English. Specifically for math, you need to have geometry somewhere on your UC application. If you don't have geometry, basically you're considered inadmissible to the UC system. Don't ask me how, don't ask me why. The UCs have determined that geometry must be added to the transcript for you to be admissible. Another thing that happens is a lot of students, more and more students, are taking community college courses, or maybe they're doing a summer program at a school like UCLA where they get a transcript. You must report those grades. But I got a W, but I did poorly and I didn't put in my effort and I got a C plus in the class. It doesn't matter, because what's going to happen at the end of the day is if you get admitted to the school, you're going to need to send in your transcripts. They're going to go to something called the National Student Clearinghouse and see that, hey, you actually do have grades at a California community college or something like that. And they're going to be like, well, why didn't you report it when you originally applied to the UC campuses? And so that could be considered something like dishonesty. So you want to cover your bases right now and make sure you report all your community college and college classes, no matter how good or bad those grades are. Additional comments. So this is going to be more important for out-of-state students, but in-state students can also use this. Any sort of academic gaps in your record, like maybe you couldn't take AP Chemistry one semester because it just didn't work on your campus. That kind of information is going to be very important because your teacher isn't writing a letter of recommendation or anything like that. But for out-of-state students, what really helps me as a reader is understanding the weird nuances of your school. Like I've seen a high school where there's like AP and then there's accelerated and there's honor. So then there's kind of like 3 levels of coursework for me to understand. Or I've seen some schools where a student takes like this designation of class. So if a class is designated as advanced, it's actually considered more advanced than an AP course. So certain things like that really helps me understand the context of the school because I don't have any information. I don't see a school profile. Moving on to test scores. So this one is a very touchy topic. When it comes to test scores, students are afraid to report their AP scores because they're like, but I got a 3. A 3 is basically the equivalent to a C. And I just need to reassure you, I've gone through so much reader training and they are adamant about the fact they want to see all test scores and they will not hold a 3, 2, or even 1 against you. Now, having quite a few 4s and 5s can actually boost your applications, but I promise you that reporting 3s do not detract from your UC application. Similarly, you can report any IB grades. Unfortunately, IB grades probably don't help. You know, you're usually taking an SL and SLs don't transfer. So that is what it is. And then here's the one place where you might report your SAT or ACT score. It's just for English proficiency, and that's all it is. You cannot backdoor your test score into the UC application. I've seen some students try to put it in, and in the best case scenario, it does nothing. In the worst case scenario, you've kind of wasted space that you could have put something else more important there. We're on the activities and words section. So here's where I see a lot of misinformation being spread. The biggest piece of misinformation I see spread is you must fill out all 20 spots on your application. No, the UCs really care about depth over breadth. I mean, you can report every single thing that you've done. It just takes longer to read. And it's kind of annoying sometimes when like there's certain things that I just really don't care about. I'll read it, but like I don't need to know that you spent one weekend doing a beach cleanup, no matter how impactful that was. It's, you know, it's kind of a neutral thing to me. Another thing I see over here is the people freaking out about ordering the activities in a specific order. And here's some insider information. When you submit the application and you send it to the schools download it in their own way. So the things kind of get all jumbled and re-downloaded. So no matter how much care and attention you put into it, it really doesn't matter how you order it. And I say this specifically because it's basically impossible to reorder something. If you list something in a particular order, the only way you can reorder it is by deleting everything and re-inputting it in the right order. So don't stress out about that. Another thing you don't really need to stress out over is how you label the different activities. There are certain activities that kind of are either extracurricular or volunteer or maybe an award or honor. So let me maybe for simplicity's sake break down how I would view these. So there's 6 different categories on the activities and awards list, right? So award or honor. An award or honor is something you just got an award for and maybe didn't spend too much time doing. Maybe you did a competition. Maybe you got awarded student of the month, student of the year, that sort of stuff. Now, if there was a significant amount of time involved, you could list that over here, right? Maybe it took you like 3 weeks to prepare for this competition. Then list what you did to achieve this honor. Then moving on, educational preparation programs. These tend to be more of those formalized programs that you do. Maybe like Cosmos is a really popular one, Beaverworks through MIT. Some formalized program that you did outside of school. I've seen students put the IB diploma here, a summer program in which you didn't get a transcript. Then number 3 is extracurricular activity or volunteer community service. Those two are very much overlapping. So the big distinction I do over here is if you notice extracurricular activity only has 1 box for you to list what you did. And then if you look at volunteer community service, there's 2 boxes. So it gives you the chance to describe the organization or group. So sometimes I've told students, hey, you should do volunteer work because then it gives you more chance to kind of explain the organization itself as well as what you did. So otherwise, it really doesn't matter what you did there. Other coursework, this is for any like non-A through G classes like health, counseling, PE. Honestly, it really doesn't matter if you fill this out because they're non-transferable classes anyways. But maybe there's something that you're particularly proud of, like you did an online edX course and you learned about, microbiology and you spent a significant amount of time doing that. Yeah, go ahead and list that there because it shows something that you took upon yourself and you didn't get a transcript for it. So then when it comes to the job description work experience, right, a question that I get from a lot of students is like, well, what am I supposed to put here? I really don't care. The one thing that matters for a lot of UC readers though is they want to see if you're using the money to somehow support your family with bills or anything like that. They really want to honor the fact that some kids are so busy and have so many family responsibilities that they can't do some of these crazy programs or they can't afford some of these crazy programs, right? Instead, they're spending their summers working at McDonald's so they can help keep the lights on. So if you're using your money to support your family, make sure you're being very explicit about that. Moving on, we have the applying for scholarships. I will be honest, I've rarely seen students get any of these scholarships. It is common for a high achieving student to be called in for a Regent Scholarship or a Chancellor Scholarship at Berkeley, but you can just go ahead and click any of these. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Just pick which ones overlap with any identities that you have. Now we have the EOP program. If you are a first-gen student, maybe your families were not college educated, or you have a family or parents who were educated outside the U.S. and really didn't know how to navigate the U.S. system, EOP is a great opportunity for you to get extra support services. So you can check off this box and just write a couple sentences about your background. You don't need to stress out about it. You can just be pretty direct on like, okay, this is my family background and this is why I would want to approach this program. And then of course we have the personal insight questions. I have so many videos on the personal insight questions that you can feel free to ask for help with, and then I'll just send you those videos. So just make sure when you're filling out the personal insight questions that you're using direct language, you're not focusing on too many metaphors. And then please take advantage of the additional comment section if there's important information that I need to know about your background, maybe parents divorce, maybe health issues. For a lot of students, instead of using the challenge PIQ and writing 350 words about it, I recommend that they just talk about their challenges in this additional comment section, maybe in 3-4 sentences, being very like cut and dry about it, not super emotional about it. And then that gives them a chance to use the 4 PIQs to talk about, academic achievements or their passions. Think about that when it comes to additional comment. There's lots of opportunity for you to tell me just a little bit more context in this section. And then we've gotten to the end of the UC application. So if you have any questions or comments about anything that I said that wasn't completely clear, feel free to leave those below.